In today's show, we're looking back at the 2020-2021 season for the Los Angeles Lakers. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd. I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by Michelob Ultra at only 2.6 grams of carbs and 95 calories. It's only worth it if you enjoy it. Stay tuned for the Ultra Player of the Week coming up later in the episode. As I said, today we are here to talk about those Los Angeles Lakers and what happened during their season. So, hey, let's talk about them right now. 42-30. Obviously, a disappointing end result going out in the first round to the Phoenix Suns as the 7th seed. You're narrowly getting through that first play-in game against the Warriors. But of course, they were absolutely rolling before injuries to LeBron James and Anthony Davis derailed their season. But that's the peril. And I think there's a parallel between that and also when we look at fantasy teams, especially when you're in an auction draft. And if you're looking at a stars and scrub mentality, it's all well and good to have LeBron and Anthony Davis, who before the season you'd say they're two of the top 5 players in basketball. But if they go down, you're screwed. Like, you just got nobody there who's able to pick up that slack. And then it's all well and good to say, well, you need those stars in the playoffs. But if you're in a situation when they're not healthy in the playoffs, they're not fully right, and the rest of your team struggled, and you're in a situation against a better team and you're on the road, it makes it harder. And that is, again, one of those drawbacks of building a team that way. And LeBron at age 36 and Anthony Davis with his myriad injury concerns, it's always going to be that risk. And it obviously bit them in the ass this season as they go out in the first round of the playoffs. They had the 24th best offense, which is really inexcusable having Davis, having LeBron. But again, the pieces around them just not particularly good. I hated the moves they made in the offseason with Dennis Schroder and MONTREZL, and we saw how ineffective those guys were in the playoffs. I hated the move of Drummond, and we saw how ineffective he was in the playoffs. Just moves that, because they've got name value and individually they put up numbers in situations that are tailored perfectly to them, doesn't mean they're going to work on a team with LeBron and with Anthony Davis, and we saw that clearly was the case. Now, all credit to the Lakers. They finished with the best defense in the NBA. I don't really know how they did it, to be fair. Anthony Davis missing so much time and playing guys like HARELL. That is a real Vogel masterpiece, and getting so many guys to buy in and play at a really high level. But yeah, that offense needs work. 16th in pace. They have one pick in this upcoming draft, a first rounder. Their first rounder, pick number 22. Who knows what they decide to do in terms of this off-season and moves they want to make, but they are in a relatively precarious position, I guess, in terms of decisions that need to be made. Bunch of guys that are free agents. Dennis Schroder, Wes Matthews, Alex Caruso, Jared Dudley, Ben McLemore, Markieff Morris, Andre Drummond. They're all unrestricted free agents. Schroder apparently turned down that $20 million a year extension offer. There is no team that should be even getting close to offering him that much money. If they do, they deserve to be a terrible franchise. I don't know whether he comes back to the Lakers, but he obviously didn't work out particularly well in the playoffs. Wes Matthews, he's old. He's the 34, 35. He's not a huge piece. Now, Caruso's a guy that I think they do need to bring back. Dudley, McLemore, not really much interest in those guys. Markieff Morris and Andre Drummond. It does appear like they're going to bring Andre Drummond back. I wouldn't have thought that pairing with him and Davis and LeBron went particularly well, and he's not that good, but just depends on how much you need to spend on Drummond to bring back. Maybe it is a tenable scenario, but he's not going to be the guy that when he was in Detroit or when he was in Cleveland and he was getting just a unfathomable usage, that he could be a real fantasy beast. I think those days are over for Andre Drummond, and I would not be signing him if I was an NBA general manager to be a starter. MONTREZL has a player option. Now, given how poorly he played this season, I think there is the market for him is going to be low, but there's also the fact that I think he hated playing for the Lakers and hated what happened there. so maybe he just wants to get out. I think it's probably a better than 50% chance that he declines that option and is gone, but we don't know. And then the other interesting one there is TALEN HORTON-TUCKER as a restricted free agent. Teams will be coming after HORTON-TUCKER, and if he gets a big offer sheet, the Lakers won't really be in position to match that. Now, he is going to be somewhat limited in terms of offer sheets he can receive just because of, I think it's the Joshie Richardson rule, just only being in the league for a couple of years. But it's going to be intriguing what the Lakers do. So there's a lot of questions they have. The Schroder one, the Morris, Drummond, Caruso, Horton-Tucker, and Harrell's player option are all key decisions that need to be made by the Lakers for this upcoming off season. But we're going to talk about Michelob Ultra Player of the Week. The Lakers are out of the playoffs, but who is the Michelob Ultra Player of the Week? Let's go with LeBron James, because why not? LeBron is always in people's heads. He's always in people's discussions, and I believe that he is going to be declining, he is declining a spot in the US Olympic team. So he's definitely in the news. Does LeBron deserve, or does he have the right to decline Olympic performance? Absolutely he does. If I was him, I wouldn't want to be going over to that scenario. But, when LeBron does play, and when he does play for Team USA, he brings joy. He brings happiness. He makes the US basically unbeatable. And like Michelob Ultra, it's only worth it if you enjoy it. And for LeBron, I guess it's just not worth it for him to go and enjoy the Olympics. Only 2.6 grams of carbs and 95 calories. Joy creates success. Enjoyment isn't the end game. It is the whole game. Michelob Ultra Player of the Week is LeBron James. Credit Karma has always been there to help you make better financial decisions, and now they want you to help you even more. With a Credit Karma Money Spend account, you can be rewarded for good money habits. Credit Karma Money is a brand new checking account where you can win cash reimbursements for making purchases. When you use your Credit Karma Money debit card, that's a mouthful, you can win daily instant Karma purchase reimbursements on items up to $5,000 dues. Just pay with your debit card, and if you win, you'll be notified on the spot, and your instant Karma cash will be added back to your spend account. Open your FDIC-insured spend account for free. There's no minimum balance requirements, no overdraft fees, and free withdrawals from a network of over 50,000 ATMs. And from when you make a purchase between June 8th and June 30th, you'll be automatically entered to win $1 million. Credit Karma Money progress starts here. So right now, go to creditkarma.com/winmoney to open your free account and start winning instant karma. Go to creditkarma.com/winmoney to sign up for free and start winning instant karma. That's creditkarma.com/winmoney. Instant Karma is sponsored by Credit Karma. No purchase necessary. Exclusions and terms apply. See rules. Banking services provided by MVB Bank Inc. Member FDIC. Maximum balance and transfer limits apply. Okay. Now it's time for us to talk about the individual players on this Los Angeles Lakers team. They are players that I'm sure they wish they were in the playoffs. And our NBA playoffs coverage right across the NBA, Locked On NBA Network, is brought to you by Michelob Ultra. It's only worth it if you enjoy it. The 2.6 grams of carbs and 95 calories, we can all enjoy the games a little bit more this season. First player we're going to talk about
LeBron James
has to be LeBron, who obviously suffered a significant injury for pretty much the first time in his career. Wasn't to say that he was bad, because he was still pretty good. He only played 45 games, 33 minutes. He averaged 47 fantasy points, which was 8th on a per-game basis. He was 20th in category leagues, even though he was drafted at number 11. I guess that sort of splits the category and points league drafts. His best category were his assists, where he averaged 25, 7.7 rebounds and 7.8 assists with 1 steal. He shot 50 from the field, but of course the issue there is the 69.8 free throws. That's a big negative. But you're punting free throws. He moves from the 20th best player into a significantly higher range. So he still can be that end of first round guy. But I think people have to look at this with LeBron. He's 36. He's going to be 37 next season. So we look at this and we say, people will be like, I'm avoiding LeBron. We never know. He's just going to rest games. He's going to get hurt. So the narrative changes so quickly. LeBron never gets hurt, guys. That was the original narrative, and now he's always hurt. And I guess that's, 2 out of the last 3 seasons, he's missed significant chunks of time. 18, 19 with the groin injury, and now this year with the ankle injury. And it's going to continually happen for LeBron. Now, he's going to sit all back-to-backs. That narrative, which was pushed before the season, was clearly bullshit. Oh, LeBron, mate, he's going to sit out the first month of the season. LeBron, he went so far in the bubble that he's just not going to play now. He's going to take this time off. That is just not what happened, and it just was never going to happen. And I don't think it's going to happen moving forward. But he is more prone to injuries now that he is older. But I'm not avoiding him just because he hurt his ankle with a big injury. That doesn't mean that will happen again. He is probably more likely, given his age, to suffer injuries. And the minutes have come down from 38 to 37 to 35 to 34.5 to under 34 this year. That is a trend that is worth mentioning and is worth monitoring here for LeBron James. Let's have a look at some of his other numbers here. Again, we're looking at this thanks to Basketball Index, these numbers. We know what he's good at. We know that he's a great finisher. We know that he did improve his shooting numbers this season, LeBron. He was at 37% from three, a true shooting of 60%, which is the highest in the last 3 seasons. We know he's an elite playmaker. We know he's a good post player as well. Putting up some really, really strong numbers as per usual. He is LeBron James. Like, that's just, who LeBron is. And look at all these advanced metrics. The only thing where he is less than a grade A is on his defensive raptor, where he was listed in the 59th percentile at plus 0.3. Everything else, it's just A's right across the board. Like, massive, massive numbers. We know here, on a per 75 per possessions player productivity, high points and threes and rebounds and assists. His steals and blocks aren't particularly great. We know that. That's never been a huge strength of his. Really good efficiency numbers. Offensively, there are a couple of things not quite as good there. His transition numbers are down. His pick and roll roll man, he's never really going to be involved in that sort of play all that often, though. But his isolation numbers really low, 57th percentile. And again, I think that some of that is age, although LeBron's game has never been as this elite ISO type scorer. But you get a picture. We know who LeBron is. But at this age, in terms of dynasty leagues, you're not investing a top 30 pick in him. He might have 2 years left. And you would imagine that the minutes do start to trend down. 2 years left of being an elite player is more what I meant there. Maybe even 1 year left. But again, if we're punting free throws, that rank 20 that LeBron was at this year, that could very, very easily, that could very easily transition down into top 10, top 12 type numbers. And if you look at what LeBron did this season, 25, 8, and 8. Is that outrageous to think that he does it next year? I don't really think it's outrageous at all to think LeBron James can perform at that level. All right, let's move on now to the next player, and that is, of course, Big Anthony Davis. It was, without any qualification at all, a disappointing season from Anthony Davis. I don't think anybody could argue any different. He played 36 games with that calf/Achilles problem. He played 32 minutes a night, which was down from the 34 he played the year before. He averaged just 21 points per game, almost 22. 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 1.6 blocks, 1.3 steals, 49 and 74. He was 23rd in points per game, fantasy points per game, 43 a game, and he was 31st in category leagues with his ADP being at 3. Just some horrible drops. And this is not just because of injuries. His field goal percentage went from 50 to 48. His free throws absolutely inexplicably went from 85 to 76. There's a big drop in value. His blocks, which have literally been at 2 or over for the last 7 seasons, went to 1.6. His rebounds, which have been 10 or over, apart from last year, for 7 straight seasons. This, in fact, was his worst rebounding season of his career, including his rookie year. He was at 7.9. Last year, he was at 9.3, and previous he was 12, 11, 12, 10. Like, they dropped way off. He hit 1.2 threes per game this year. This year, 0.7, because he hit him at 25%. 21 points. Like, true shooting from 61, and it's been at 61, 60, and 61 the last 3 years. 55 this season. Like, just horrendous changes in production from Anthony Davis. And look, some of it is injury. Some of it was just a weird situation. And some of it was just he played poorly. Simple as that. He just did not play well. His numbers, his usage was not that different. 29 down to 28.3. It's not a huge drop. He played minutes, which did drop a little bit, and I think some of that's injury prevention. And we do have to be concerned about games played. Now, he had a couple of stretch there, 16, 17, 17, 18, where he played 75 games. Then 56 was that year in New Orleans where he sat out the end of the year to get traded. And then 62 in the bubble year last year, which is not a bad number. But only the 34 games this season is, or 36 games this season is not an ideal number. We have to be somewhat concerned of that ongoing calf Achilles issue. But what I do think is this per game rank of 31st is Not what I expect. I don't expect his blocks to be this low, his field goals to be this low, his three-point percentage to be this low, his free throw percentage to be this low. I don't expect his three-pointers to be this low. I think his rebounds can go up. I think that nearly everything that Anthony Davis did this year, while we have a right and we absolutely should be concerned about games missed through injury, the per minute and per game stuff, absolutely, I believe, has every chance to improve. There's no reason that Anthony Davis's blocks, rebounds, shooting numbers should all be at career lows like they were this year. They shouldn't be at that same level again next season. Advanced numbers still really liked him. Like 97th percentile in LeBron, 88th in RPM, 93rd in Raptor, 82nd in luck-adjusted RAPM, 96th in box score plus minus 2.0. Like, everything loved him. A couple of offensive RPM didn't like him as much, and his luck-adjusted RAPM didn't like his defense as much, but he was still a really, really good player. And this huge dip in his true shooting down to 55.6 and effective field goals way down. His spot-up shooting numbers just horrendous. 0.8 points per possession is really bad. His isolation numbers really bad as well. I don't really see Anthony Davis being that bad of a player. The injury concern, sure, but he is going to slide in drafts. If he is available at the end of the third or middle of the third round, which I do believe he will be, I'll take that risk, because if it hits, he's a top 5 to 7 player on a per game basis, and he could stay healthy. There's a real chance that he stays healthy. He'll miss 10 games, 7 games, 9 games. He'll miss that. So will almost every other player. Yeah, expecting 20 games missed, I reckon you might end up just missing out on a little bit if you do take that risk with or do avoid Anthony Davis completely, because he's not going to be a first-round pick, I guarantee. And I would not take him in the first round, even though per game he can return that value. Second round, I'm probably going to be in on it. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. Baseball season, NBA playoffs, they're all in full swing. And you can track all of that action at BetOnline. Get all the latest news, odds, and info for all of your sporting needs, including Major League Baseball, NBA, the NHL, and all of your UFC, MMA action. Before that next tip, head over to BetOnline on your laptop or mobile device and check out all of the great sporting news, sign-up bonuses, and contest information. Don't sit on the sidelines anymore, as this is your chance to get into the game as teams prep for their runs to the championship. Head to the website, use your mobile device, and use our promo code LOCKEDON to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline are your online sportsbook experts. With ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you'll need. Why would you endure often pointless and seemingly intimidating questioning? Is your Odyssey an LX or an EX? Who knows that? And wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry. You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Why choose to spend 30, 50, or even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto prices are always reliably low for every customer, and they have everything you need, from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. Go and explore the easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck, and write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Okay, time for us to move on to the next player, and that is your mate, the big avocado, Andre Drummond. Now, to say that I've been critical of Andre Drummond during the season, I'd say is an understatement. And that is not being critical of Andre Drummond, the bloke, at all. I think he has an outsized opinion of his offensive capabilities, but having confidence is fine. He played just 46 games, 27 minutes a night after Cleveland sat him down because they were trying to trade him. He averaged 37 fantasy points, which was much higher when he was in Cleveland. He was 81st in category leagues, much higher when he was in Cleveland. He was enrolling as like a top 20 guy because they were giving him like 30% usage, which is an absolutely foolish decision. Now, whether they were giving that to him, which I'm not sure that that's the case, or he was giving him that himself, which is just a horrendous decision on his behalf, I don't know. But let's get one thing clear. Andre Drummond is not a good basketball player at this point. He is... Actually, okay, let me rephrase that because people get on you, she's better than you. He is a very, very good basketball player. He is not a very good NBA basketball player. He can be an okay rotation player, but as we've seen, like in the playoffs, it doesn't hold up. On a good team, it doesn't hold up. He does not know his role. He does not know his place. His defense sucks. He is an elite rebounder. He is quite good with his hands and steals in passing lanes, and he's not a terrible passer. But there is a lot of decision-making and IQ, basketball IQ stuff, which is just completely off. In those 27 minutes, he averaged 15 and 12. But Josh, he's a walking double-double. Sure. He averaged 1.4 steals. He averaged 1.1 blocks. He shot 49%, which as a big man who has no perimeter game is horrendous. He shot 60% from the line for a true shooting of 52%. Again, absolutely shitful. These are shitful numbers. We know what he is. He's a great rebounder. He gets good steals. He scores at a weirdly low efficiency, but high usage. Usage 27%. Again, embarrassing. He should not be that high. But now, I know that I've been preaching this for a long time, but he was completely exposed this season. And I would hope that NBA GMs, NBA players that campaign, man, we've got to get Andre Drummond. He's got to come and start. We love him. Look at those numbers. The big avocado. He's a great rebounder. He's a defensive player of the year. No. All those things, hopefully they've gone by the wayside. And we realize what he is. A guy that can come in and play 18 minutes, 20 minutes as a backup, maybe as a starter, but you just get him, don't put the ball in his hands, get him out of the way, and let the other players who are good do some things. Because, he isn't. It is frustrating to watch him play. Again, elite rebounder. He gets shots at the rims. He doesn't necessarily hit them that well. His ability to get steals is a real positive. But I'm struggling to find other positives. Look at this offensive LeBron metric, 25th percentile, negative 1.2. That's really poor. His real plus minus hated him, 43rd percentile overall. Raptor wasn't quite as harsh. He was in the 69th percentile there.
Giggity.
He's just not particularly good. His offensive stuff is rough. Look at these Fs and Ds in his scoring ability. But again, an elite rebounder, elite fantasy point producer, really good scorer given that outsized usage. Blocks not bad. Steals really good. An inordinate amount of turnovers for a big man. He just does not know how to play within the constructs of the current NBA. And that's a real problem. Andre Drummond had been, the last 3 seasons, 21st, 21st, and 16th in terms of category rankings, and that's not even in a punt free throw thing. So a top 10 player in a punt free throw build. He played 33 minutes a night. His usage this year was the highest of his career, which is mind-boggling. Now, with the Lakers, it was much lower. He got down to 20 usage, and that's really where he should stay. And in that time, he was like the 116th ranked player. Punt free throws, you move into top 70, top 80, and that's really the area where you've got to look at him as a contributor, as that bench guy who, if he gets 23 minutes, 22 minutes, he can be a useful back-end fantasy player. But his time in that top 20, there is no team that will be giving him that level of playing time. Look, I think his efficiency can rise, and with the Lakers it did. 54% playing for the Lakers from the field. That's because he took smarter shots. But obviously the minutes dropped and the usage dropped, and that balanced him out to be that 9th or 10th round type player. And I do think that's probably where his value is going to lie as we move forward. He's not as bad as the memes would suggest about him, but he's also not as good as the counting stats would suggest about him also. So it is getting that balance somewhere in the middle. Let's talk about Dennis Schroder, another player who I think is significantly worse than what his counting stats put up or would indicate to you. Schroder played 61 games, 32 minutes as the starting point guard. He averaged 30 fantasy points, 87th there, 100th in category leagues with an ADP of 112th. So you say if you got him at 112, it was a real win. But when LeBron was healthy, he was not a rosterable player, really. It took LeBron going down for him to get the ball back into his hands to do some things which are interesting. And even still, he scored 15 points per game with only under 6 assists, 1.1 steals. He shot just 44% from the field, 85% from the line. He was exposed as a player who can't do anything in a situation where he needs to be relied upon in the playoffs. At best, he is a backup guard. Look, you look at, this is going to sound wild, but look at Reggie Jackson, what he's doing now. Is Reggie Jackson a better player than Dennis Schroder? And I feel like maybe he is. Yeah, if he was to go... there are teams that need point guards for sure. Like at the moment, the Celtics are crying out for one. But does Schroder fit next to Tatum, Brown, Smart? Smart is actually should be their point guard, and that's what they should be prioritizing. But do I see Schroder as going to a team and playing 32 minutes a night next season? I don't think that's a particularly wise decision for a team to rely upon him to do that. Again, I don't think that he is that good. He put up some good numbers. He's a decent driver. He's an okay playmaker. He's not a terrible finisher. But again, he's not particularly good. You finish at the rim at 51%. He gets there okay, but 51% is quite a poor number. 54 true shooting, 33 from three. Last year he was quite a good three-point shooter, but overall I don't trust his three-point shooting. That last season for the Thunder, that was the only year he's been good as a three-point shooter, so I don't trust that. He's never been a great steals guy. They were okay this season, his steals. But I just don't see him as a guy that we want to rely upon as a solid player moving forward. The advanced metrics he wasn't terrible, but they didn't particularly love him. He's LeBron right on the 50th percentile. His EPM was at 68th percentile, so he's sort of in that area. And if we look here in his per 75 player productivity, the only category that really stands out is his assists, and even that, it's not particularly good. His scoring's all right. Not a good rebounder, not a high-volume three-point guy, not a steals guy, not a blocks guy. Again, bad rebounder, as I said. He's just... where he ends up, I don't know. I would not... if he finds himself in a role where he has to be the starter and that usage goes up, then sure, he's going to be a draftable guy. 22 usage this year. That could spike to 26 because he thinks he's better than he is, and some teams think he's better than he is. But ideally, his role is not as a 32-minute-a-night player. And it's not as a 27% usage player. He's not the greatest passer. So I think there has to be some concern about what his future is in terms of fantasy value as we move forward. Let's now talk about another guy who was overrated to be the sixth man of the year. The last didn't say he didn't have a great year, but he's definitely overrated. And that is the table, MONTREZL Harrell. 69 games, 23 minutes a game. Again, I hated the signing and I wasn't at all interested in drafting him. He averaged 26 fantasy points. He was 141st in category leagues, 123rd in points leagues. His ADP was 94, which is absolutely one to avoid and for obviously good reasons. His field goal percentage was still really good. And he did play better this season defensively. And again, that's a Vogel thing and Harrell gets credit for it as well. He did play better defensively this year than I think he has in the past, but he just has too many limitations to me to be considered someone that you want to bring in to be a 30-minute-a-night center. Now, we know the name that's always going to be out there is Charlotte because they just desperately need a center. I would much rather they just develop PJ Washington to do that or try and go after Rashawn Holmes to be that starting center for them. Harrell, to me, just isn't the answer to that question that you want answered. Who can be my 30-minute-a-night center? Would he put up okay counting stats? Yeah, he's a massive usage, hustle, really good field goal, really good scoring guy who is not a bad rebounder, but not a great shot blocker, bad passer, not threes, bad free throws. There are a lot of downsides to his overall fantasy game. But he is someone who can go out there and put up some really good hustle stats. He's a really good roller, and I think he'd be pretty interesting next to LaMelo Ball in Charlotte if that was the case. But where he goes is going to be really key in terms of what happens over the course of the season. So he played 6 fewer minutes per game this season. His usage did drop from 24 to 21, all relatively predictable given the team that he was on. Rebound numbers, block numbers, they all fell, but he was able to up his efficiency. And the free throws at 71, not as bad as they've been in the past. And that did help his impact. But last 2 years, he was top 100 for the Clippers, and he fell well out this year. I would not be considering him as someone who would jump back into my top 100 consideration as we move forward. Now, the advanced numbers didn't hate him. His Raptor was pretty strong. He was actually a really big positive defensively there. LeBron, he was pretty positive there. And someone asked me, or multiple people, can I do a show explaining what the advanced metrics are? I will do that. I will do that. But if you just go onto the site, LeBron is a basketball index metric. You can get the description there. Real plus minus is from ESPN. Raptor is from 538. box score plus minus from Basketball Reference. You can go on and get explanations from what those stats are and how they work on those sites without me getting too much into it here. Interestingly, look at LeBron from MONTREZL Harrell. He was a plus 0.6, which is 77th percentile. In Raptor, he was a plus 1.9, 82nd percentile. RPM, he was 13th percentile. Now, Raptor and LeBron, they use a little bit more in terms of tracking data, so I find them a little bit more reliable. Then that's a real positive for Harrell, but I still, we saw how badly he played during the playoffs and down the stretch where he was getting benched for Drummond and Gasol. Like, he just wasn't a part of the rotation at times. And that obviously has to be a level of concern for him and for teams that are looking to acquire him in the future. All right, let's move on to the next player, and that is the future MVP, Kyle Kuzma. Now, again, my takes on Kuzma are looking pretty prescient now after I said in his rookie season that, hey, this dude is significantly overrated. Nah, Josh, he's going to be a star. And the future MVP nickname, which I've explained in many shows before, is a piss take of the people who were talking him up after Summer League and preseason of how good he was going to be. And now we have seen where Kyle Kuzma sits in the NBA landscape. He's not particularly good. He is 26 years of age. He played 68 games, 29 minutes a game. Averaged 25 fantasy points per game. He's 155th in category leagues. That's close to one of his best seasons. He's never been a top 100 guy. Actually, no, it's not. He was like 110th in one year too. You don't want to be relying upon Kuzma to even be playing 29 minutes, I don't think. His best category, amazingly, is a three-point shooter. This is the problem with him, right? He's not a guy you want to rely upon for high usage. He's a poor field goal, poor free throw, poor steals, poor assists, poor blocks player who hits threes and does it. 36% is okay, but shit, how much do you want to rely upon that? With Anthony Davis there, it obviously caps him. Now, if Davis moves on, let me try again. If Davis is hurt for an extended period of time, then Kuzma will push into a larger role, and he will be maybe the 90th best player. But would you ever draft a guy or go, well, I know Davis is going to miss 50 games, which is, again, a bullshit theory because Davis doesn't miss 50 games every year. Therefore, Kuzma will have that value. You add him when it happens, and then you drop him when it doesn't happen because he's not going to be this guy to force his way into larger roles because of how good he is and all these improvements that he's made. And he did make improvements. There is no doubting that he has become a better player defensively, knowing his role a little bit more. Usage dropped way off this season as well, down at just 20%. But he's not particularly good. He is a guy that's improved his perimeter shooting for sure. His passing has a long way to go. His defense has a long way to go as well. He's turned into somewhat of a damaging three-point shooter when he gets hot, but he is quite streaky with that skill. The advanced metrics, Raptor hated him. LeBron hated him. 23rd and 29th percentile. And again, that's a lot of tracking data and on-off stuff incorporated there. Did not like him as a player at all. Same as luck-adjusted RAPM. He was way down the bottom. Now, I don't think he's necessarily that bad, but a really poor true shooting as well, under 55%. Look at these per 75 numbers up here. Steals low. Blocks not particularly good. Assists low. Not a great rebounder. Hits his threes all right, but his scores okay. He just isn't good. I think we're all well aware that Kyle Kuzma isn't that good at this point, but sometimes it just does bear repeating. Let's talk about Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who I do think is never going to be a great fantasy player. He goes on hot streaks, and he had one of those hot streaks to begin this season where he was shooting like 46% from three for a big stretch of time. 28 minutes a game, almost 19 fantasy points. Didn't crack the top 200 in fantasy points this year. He was 176th in category leagues, and in large part because his free throws were so good, but he averaged under 10 points. He hit 2 threes at 41%, but he gets no rebounds, under 3, no assists, under 2. For a good defender, he gets no steals, 0.9, 0.4 steals. He just isn't a guy that can generate stats at a high level. He just isn't. I think that's just simply who he is at this point. He's a guy that can be intangibly pretty strong on the court in terms of his defensive value, but translating that into good fantasy numbers on this team. Like, he could very well be on a different team next season. I don't think that's an outrageous statement that he gets traded. I know the Clutch connections, but Clutch can't be happy with how things worked out this year. What he is a good hustle player. He's a good guy getting open three-point shots. Perimeter defensive stuff, really, really good. He's relatively reliable. He knows his role. He knows what shots he should take. But he's not a guy that's really scalable in terms of, we need you to do more KCP. He's not really a guy that has that ability to do that. The advanced stuff, again, sort of middle of the pack. 64th percentile Raptor, 54th LeBron. LeBron hated his offense, actually. 19th percentile there is pretty poor. But you look at RPM, they loved him on defense, 96th percentile. And he is a really good defender. And he is one of the key pieces as to why the Lakers' defense was as good as it was. Now, LeBron stepped up his defense at a massive level this year as well. Schroder made some improvements there, still not particularly good. Kuzma made some improvements. Gasol's still a pretty good defender. But more just the scheme and putting players in the right position was how a lot of that went down this year for the Los Angeles Lakers. Let us talk about Marc Gasol.
Oh, hi, Mark.
We didn't even know whether Gasol was going to play in the NBA this year. There was some thought that he would just stay in Europe due to COVID, play for Barcelona with his brother. That didn't eventuate. He's 36 years of age now. He played 19 minutes a game. He averaged 5 and 4 with 1 block, 1 3. Had a true shooting, which was not great, of what was it, 50? My mistake. 61% true shooting is actually an excellent number for Marc Gasol. And again, I do think that some of the Lakers' downfall was playing guys like HARELL and Drummond ahead of him. He had a 1.5 EPM. He was 96th percentile in defensive EPM. True shooting was really good. He finished at the rim at a high level. His passing was pretty solid, even though he didn't really get the ball in his hands very much. I thought that he was impressive. Now, he's not going to be a fantasy stud at all. 17 fantasy points outside the top 200 for category leagues. He blocks shots. He plays good defense. He's an excellent communicator, and he knows what he needs to do, which, again, is one of those things that players do come unstuck with, is not feeling the role they need to. But a really good contester. He hits threes at a really good level. He's a great passer. He's a very, very solid defensive player as well. And he's just able to get out there and be good at what he does. Much better defender than Drummond, much better defender than HARELL, much better passer, much better shooter. And I think he fits perfectly with those guys. And it did take a while for them to decide to put him back into the rotation. And he was pretty pissed, I think, with the way the Lakers handled things. And rightfully so, because he knows he's better than some of those other shit players who were getting minutes ahead of him. LeBron loved him, 88th percentile. Raptor, 76th percentile. Box score plus minus, 87th percentile. Now, some of the others didn't love him as much. RPM, which again, I'm losing a little bit of faith in RPM with some of the numbers. I'm not as convinced with that. I'm more focusing on Raptor and LeBron as the two ones that I focus more on. But they hated his offense, RPM did. But luck-adjusted RAPM had him 77th percentile. He's, again, true shooting in the 88th percentile. Spot-up work, pick and roll work, 95th and 96th percentile. Really good numbers there. Decent on putbacks. Now, he's never going to be used in isolation. He's not a post player, and he's sucked in those areas. But overall, his offensive efficiency was good, and I thought his defensive stuff was pretty solid, despite some of the, can't have Gasol out there. Drummond, huge upgrade. Wrong. It was wrong before Drummond came to the Lakers. It was clearly wrong after Drummond was there. And I don't think there'd be too many. I'm not saying Gasol is excellent and they can't afford to upgrade there, because they can. Well, they should. But to say that Drummond and HARELL are much better options than Gasol is foolish, in my opinion. Let's talk about this bloke, TALEN HORTON-TUCKER. And again, just another reminder of just being aware of Lakers preseason hype. 20 minutes a game for Horton-Tucker, 65 games. He averaged 18.5 fantasy points. He was 231st in category leagues. He showed plenty of flashes. But there were people, look at Horton-Tucker in the preseason. I'm drafting him with my 10th pick, my 11th pick. He's definitely a flyer. And my constant thing, you can go back and look at my preseason videos and talking about him. I said, hey, he's doing well, but how the hell is he getting 30 minutes a night on this team? And to me, the answer was, there's no way. Unless they take Kuzma out of the rotation, they don't play KCP. Matthews, are they going to bring him in and just not play him? In the end, they didn't play Matthews. Are they going to take CARUSO out? The answer to all those questions was obviously a clear no. But when a guy that plays for the Lakers, shout out Kyle Kuzma, goes out there and puts up big numbers in preseason, people lose their minds. This is not to say Horton-Tucker can't be good. Like, the guy is 20. I think he's going to be a really solid player. Is he going to be awesome? I don't know about that, but I know he's got plenty of room to improve from where he was this season, like plenty of room. But again, it's a real lesson in just watch what's happening in preseason and look at the context behind it. He shot 28% from three. Like, that has to improve. 58% at the rim. True shooting of 54%. He averaged 9, 2, and 3 with 0.6 threes and 1 steal. Good at getting steals. He improved his free throws a ton. Like, a ton. He was able to improve a lot this year. And again, he's only 20. There is going to be a role coming for him, a bigger role over the next 2 to 3 years, for sure. An absolutely weird player who can bully his way to the rim, who can finish at a high level, who can defend at a super high level, and can develop into a really good passer. And I do think that there are top 100 fantasy seasons in Horton-Tucker's future. Do I think it's coming next season? Well, that, I guess, depends on what team he ends up at. But the shooting is a massive, massive drawback. If you want to criticize Ben Simmons, and you absolutely can, for his lack of fantasy value because of, you know, his free throw percentage, and his lack of threes, and his low usage, and his scoring, then you've got to ding Horton-Tucker the same way. Now, they're obviously on different levels. But when we're going to look how young he is and look how far he got to develop, it can all come. But the shooting is still a massive problem for him. The advanced metrics, as a young player, these are all pretty solid. Your 61st percentile LeBron on this team is great. 61st percentile Raptor is great. Look at these assists and steal numbers over here on the player productivity per 75. The scoring, 70th percentile. Like, they're pretty good numbers. Offensively, as a roll man, as a post-up guy, some good numbers. As a ball handler pick and roll, that's super encouraging as a 20-year-old to be 80th percentile as a pick and roll ball handler. There's a lot to improve there. Or is a great foundation. But he is very, very far from a finished product. I think most people would admit that. I'm going super long on this Lakers one, but let's go. Alex Caruso, the bald eagle. He's just an important player from a basketball perspective. 21 minutes a game, 17 fantasy points, but he's never going to be a good fantasy guy. He averaged 6 points with 3 rebounds, 3 assists, and 1.1 steals. He's good at steals, but his percentages were shithouse. Outside of shooting 40% from 3, he hit 46 from 2 for an overall 44% field goal. He was 65 from the line. His true shooting was 55%. Like, they are really not good numbers. Caruso is also 27 years of age. He's not particularly young. I'm not expecting huge improvements from him as we move forward. It's sort of into a little bit of he is who he is at this stage, but an excellent defender, a solid enough passer, and a guy that had some really good shooting, but he's a low usage player that I don't really see the ability for him to scale that up. He can definitely handle more minutes, and that would make him an interesting steal streamer, and maybe he could crack the top 150 just on the back of some steals and maybe 2 threes per game, but not someone I think teams want to be investing 28 minutes a night into as a player, despite some of the real positives that he had. And the real positives are shown in the advanced metrics. Raptor, 90th percentile, 89th for LeBron. Like, they are huge numbers because of how good he is defensively. Even luck-adjusted RAPM gets into the mix, having a 2.4, which is 92nd percentile. These are elite numbers. Is it scalable? I don't know. Is his offense a huge detriment? Absolutely. Outside of the shooting. Defensively, though, he's one of those guys that you want out there as much as you can because of how impressive he can be out there. Let's talk Markieff Morris, who is an unrestricted free agent. No idea whether he will return to the Lakers. A guy that averaged, let me just bring my screen up there. He averaged under 20 minutes, 6 points, 4 rebounds. No steals, no blocks. That's a typical Markieff thing. No assists, poor shooting. Just a true shooting of 51%. That's just what he does, outside the top 300. And a guy that showed, at times he was better than Drummond and better than MONTREZL. Absolutely, he showed that. Whether that's something that we want to rely upon at age 31 from Morris, I would say almost definitely no. But solid enough defensive stuff. Solid enough defensive rebounding. Yeah, I thought he did okay as a shot blocker as well this season, but this is Markieff Morris. Like, he's fallen behind his brother now. The advanced metrics did not like him at all. But again, I thought he showed some interesting defensive stuff, and in certain matchups, he was a preferred option. But offensively, I do think some of the struggles for him were real and not imagined. Let's talk Wes Matthews quickly, because another guy who's relatively old at this point in his career. Matthews is about to turn 35 in a few months. He played under 20 minutes a night, and there were times this season where he was out of the rotation. He averaged 10 fantasy points. He's outside the top 350 in both formats. He did hit his free throws well, which is something that he's good at, and he hit. But the problem is, as a 3-point specialist, he hit 34% of them. He didn't generate steals or blocks at a particularly high level. And you sort of worry, look, he's never going to be able to be that guy that he was, way before his Achilles or even some of those years in Dallas. He just doesn't generate enough stats to do that. Still a really good defender. Shooting has some ability to, he's a good volume three-point shooter, even though the scoring or the percentage wasn't there. His usage is exactly what it needs to be in his role. But at his age, turning 35, there's not a lot to look forward to, and his advanced stuff doesn't really tell you huge things. Although, the LeBron and the Raptor defensive metrics, they do like him. But the overall true shooting as a 3-and-D type player, you've got to be able to hit the three to be considered that. And let's talk one last player now. We're not going to go into detail on ALFONZO McKINNIE, Devontae Kachuk, Jared Dudley, or Kostas Antetokounmpo. The only guy there with any value is Kachuk, but he's 25 already. And I don't really... he's like a worse MONTREZL HARELL. Let's talk Ben McLemore, because a lot of people seem to think that he was going to be an answer for this team. And we've seen McLemore around for a long time. 17 minutes a game, 8 points, almost 2 threes, which is great. But he was a guy that I think last year was hitting about 42%. An elite three-point shooter. He's going to carry your team. Well, that dropped back to under 35% this season. And I think we're getting more of an indication of exactly just who Ben McLemore is as a player in this time. He's a good three-point shooter. He can move pretty well without the ball. Defensively, I don't think he's particularly good. I think he can be all right. He can guard a few positions, but I wouldn't say that he is a particularly great defender, and I don't think there's much fantasy upside in him. And the advanced stuff really would paint a similar picture. The shooting dropped way off. True shooting of 52% is pretty rough. Those offensive metrics look pretty terrible as well. His best category is as a spot-up guy, where he's 1.07 points per possession, and that's still not absolutely elite at all from Benny McLemore. All right, that'll do it for me today. Another long show. Again, these extra stats are pushing me a little bit further. I hope you guys don't mind. But don't forget to follow this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on the Odyssey app. Guys, on YouTube, hit thumbs up. Hit subscribe down. I think it's down here. There's a little subscriber down here, a little red one down there. Flick that one. Drop your comments down below as well. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.